What's going on? Happy Easter. All right, so doing a little bit of motorcycle content today. I don't do too much of it, but I really enjoy motorcycles, talking about them. Also shout out to everyone who watches all my drone videos, mountain bike stuff. Hit me up if you have any questions on any of that. But today, I want to talk about my time and experience on the 2023 Yamaha R7. This was today. I think it's like actually 1 year today that I got this bike. Got about 2,000 miles on it, a couple track days on it. I've gotten to know the bike pretty well. I kind of quit riding when I was right around 20 years old. I had a couple GSX-R 600s, CBR 600, and R6. Wanted to get back into riding, and I felt like as I kind of started out with the Grum and worked my way up, and I'm like, maybe I just need something. Gas prices were crazy at the time. Something gets good gas mileage, get me to work. And then I started looking at the like R3s and that type of stuff. And I'm like, I'm probably gonna get bored of that. I'm like, I saw the R7. So I was trying to decide what bike I wanted to get as I decided to get back into riding. Then I started wanting something that I could do some track days with, ride to work, ride around town, something that was fun, but that wouldn't be too powerful and get me into too much trouble. So I kind of found the R7, and it kind of fit the bill when I was going to make a purchase and getting back into a bike. It was, racy geometry, sporty. I mean, it looks the 100% business. I get asked if it's an R1 all the time. Kind of funny. To people who don't know bikes, it could be mistaken for an R1, and then you see it riding down the road, and it's definitely does not have any get up and go like an R1, but it's a very punchy, very quick bike, especially with the modifications that I've done to it. But I kind of feel like I've hit my peak of what I want this bike to be. It's kind of never going to be what I want it to be. With that being said, I do really love this bike. It is so much fun to ride, especially around town. And in the twisties, that torque is so much fun compared to like my previous 600s where it's kind of no one's home and then they just come to life, kind of like a two-stroke dirt bike. I've done so many mods to this bike. We'll run through the mods I've done here. GPR steering stabilizer, Pirelli Rosso 4 tires, short throw throttle, rear passenger delete, tucked up systems, fender delete, and integrated taillight. I did do a 520 chain conversion, driven racing, kept the same gearing because I felt that was one thing. We'll get into that. The gearing on this bike. I'll save that here for a little bit. Woodcraft rear sets, really enjoy those. Akrapovic full system exhaust, DNA Stage 2 air kit, and two-wheel Dynoworks ECU flash, which the flash was an absolute must on this bike. I feel like all the mods I've done, I kind of needed to do to this bike, and it's still really not what I want out of it now that I'm back into riding and got my confidence back, and I'm able to figure out more what I want. And I think what I want is I'm going back to, I got a 2024 Kawasaki ZX6R non-ABS KRT. It's in the crate right now. Carl Cycles, shout out to Sam. Should be ready this week. I'm taking this to Twin Falls in 2 days from this video to give it to the new owner. For those of you that are curious what I got, I wanted 10 grand because of all the mods that I have done to this, which is probably a hard thing to do, no matter what, because a new one's 9,100 out the door. It still was like over 11 out the door, but then you got to do all the mods to it. I've got like almost 4 grand worth of mods into this, and the kid who's buying it really appreciated all the modifications I did, so he offered me 7,100 and a very mint condition 2020 Honda Grom with only 1,900 miles on it. It looks pristine. I mean 2,000 miles and it's a 2020. That's pretty impressive. So I'm taking the Grom. I'm driving this over there. We're gonna um, swap bikes. He's gonna give me the Grom. He's gonna pay 7,100, and I'm gonna flip the Grom. Hopefully, I can get 3 grand for it. I think I feel pretty confident I can do that, and that's gonna put me right around 10, right where I wanted to be. So it was kind of a pretty sweet deal. Let me know in the comments if you've had an R7 and sold it, what you guys got for it. I just felt like this was worth it. I also, one thing I did, the zero gravity windscreen. I kind of like the aftermarket windscreens a little bit better, but yeah, I've really enjoyed my time with this bike. It's unbelievably fun around town, but it's not super fun on the freeway, or if I'm riding to the twisties. There's long straightaways where I'm riding with some buddies. You're kind of sitting in the back waiting for the twisties because you're giving it all it's got, and over 90 to 100 miles an hour, it's just kind of like no one's home. It really kind of drops off over that 100-mile-an-hour mark, which, yeah, I don't regularly go above 100 miles an hour, but I do miss being on the track, those straightaways, and that 600 power. That 600 power band is just so much fun. If I was trying to pursue a racing career, I would keep this and make this just a permanent track toy. It is such a great bike. It teaches you how to be a good rider because you can't rely on that power. You got to rely on your braking skills, your acceleration skills, cornering skills, all that stuff is the only way to be fast around a track on this bike, just because it just doesn't have the power. And so if I was going to pursue a racing career, yeah, I would keep it because it is the perfect track training tool. I hate when people call it a beginner bike. I don't think this is a beginner bike personally. But I want that inline four. It's hard to find a 600 these days. And I looked at the Aprilia RS660. That's kind of feel like what this bike should have been. I like the twin spar frame. I like it's got 100 horsepower, which is killer. I mean, this thing, it's probably with everything done to it, 70 to 75 horsepower to the rear wheel. I think the Aprilia's got the power and the top end that this bike lacks. But I don't know. I haven't ridden one, so I can't really say. But so getting back to why I want to go with the 636, it's got the torque. I used to be really against the 636 because you couldn't, I did want to pursue when I was younger a racing career, but you couldn't race the 636 in the super sport class. And now you can ride a 750 Panigale V2 950 twin. You can ride the 765 Daytona. You can ride the 636 and an R6. So like you can ride all those in the super sport class. So but now it doesn't really matter. The 636 makes way more sense for the majority of people because it's got a little bit more torque than a normal 600 and it's got a little bit more horsepower. So I think that's going to be the perfect bike for me. I don't need a 1000. That's just overkill for everything. I think 600s are just super fun on the track, and that's what I used to ride at the track. And really looking forward to getting that Kawasaki, but I kind of wanted to give you guys some closing thoughts on the R7. I think it's a great bike. I really don't have anything bad to say about it other than one thing I didn't like about the R7 was the fuel range. It barely gets like 110 to 115 miles before the gas light's on. And I know some of those other 600s are getting closer to 200 miles. So that was one thing I didn't like about the R7. It lacks the top end. It is a little bit, it is a really narrow bike, which that kind of did take me a long time to kind of get used to. I like a little bit wider bike, like the R6s and the 636. They're just a little bit wider. They feel a little bit more planted. I really did appreciate the GPR stabilizer on this bike because over 80, 90 miles an hour, or rather over 60 miles an hour on the freeway, it can get kind of twitchy, especially if it's windy, and that stabilizer just makes it track more like a 600. I don't know if that's something to do with the frame too. This is a steel tubular frame, maybe some more flex in there. I'm not an expert, but I feel like the Super Sports with the twin spar frame, aluminum frames, I feel like they just hold a line a lot better, especially in a corner, feel a little bit more planted. This one feels really good in the corners, but it doesn't feel like a 600 locked in when you're carving through corners. And that's kind of what I miss too. But it's very fast in the corners. I've seen people keep up with 1000s and the twisties on these things, no problem. But it's those straightaways where you're kind of SOL. So, but yeah, that's it for this bike, and I've really enjoyed my time on it. It served its purpose. So I guess you could say it was a beginner or beginner plus getting back into motorcycles, and now I want something more. So might be eating my words on that one, but I definitely wouldn't put a beginner rider on this bike per se, unless they have some dirt bike experience. When I was 18, I got my first GSXR 600. I had years of experience on a Honda 250F dirt bike, so I was able to go into my 600 as my first street bike with some skills and knowing how a bike reacts when it loses traction. I think that's super important. But yeah, Yamaha R7, great bike. I think the Yamaha R9 would be a lot more intriguing for me now that I've kind of feel a little bit, now that I feel more confident on the bike. I'm kind of getting back to how I used to feel, and an R9 would be super fun to ride, but I don't know, something about those Screamer 600s that are just so much fun. And I will definitely show you guys when I get that bike. I'm going to do a couple mods to it. Nothing crazy, not as much as this, because I feel like that bike's probably a lot more, probably already good to go. It's got a better suspension too, which I feel like the suspension on this bike is adequate, but I feel like a lot of people do the Owens updates, Owens upgrade to this bike to make it track a lot better on the track, suspension wise. But the 636 probably, for me, I probably won't need to do anything to it other than set it up for my weight. It's got the big boy forks on there, fully adjustable front and rear suspension Showa. That thing looks awesome. I'm super excited to get on that bike. But yeah, I've had a blast on this R7, and it sounds amazing. That cross plane 270 crank design is just such a badass sound, but so is a 636 at 15,000 RPM. So yeah, to each their own on that one. Oh, and before I get out of here, I did want to mention the gearing on this bike. It was very, it was difficult for me at first to figure out the shifting on this bike, because I'm so used to bikes, power bands not even kicking in until 8, 9, 10,000 RPMs. And that's when this thing's done. So there is a learning curve on using that torque and that low end power, and you kind of just keep it in that middle rev range. Compared to 600, you always got to keep it above that, that 10,000 mark to really get the full benefits out of the bike. So that was, and the gearing is so much taller on a 600. This one's so much shorter, and it tops out at 135 miles an hour. So it did take a lot for me to kind of get used to. You're kind of riding around town in third, fourth, sometimes fifth gear, whereas 600s you ride around in second, third sometimes, just depending on the speed. But they rev so much higher, and each gear you're going so much faster. So that was difficult for me, especially on the track, trying to figure out I'd take corners in the same gear I used to be in, and it was not the right gear on this bike. So that is just something to mention and to know. I kept the same gearing when I did the 520 chain conversion, because I don't think the bike has the power to gear it any taller, and then gearing it any shorter, I feel like you're just going to be constantly shifting all the time. I feel like I shift way more on this bike than I do on a 600. So yeah, the gearing on this bike just makes sense for what it is, in my opinion. But I know some people have re-geared theirs and messed with the taller, shorter gearing. I don't know. I felt like I would want to go taller if I was going to change it, but I just don't think it's got the horsepower to back it up. So that was that on the gearing. But yeah, other than that, love this bike. I am going to miss it. It's been super fun, and it's a gorgeous bike. I absolutely love it. And but I'm ready to move on and get back on a true super sport. And yeah, get down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of people. The R7 is such a love-hate bike. It's like probably one of the most polarizing bikes I've ever seen. People love it or they hate it, and it's usually no in between. But Yeah, I think it's a great bike. I would never talk shit on it. I think it's super fun. I'd love to keep it if I could. But I can only afford one bike at the moment. So, um, 636 it is. So I'll show you guys that when I get it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for more drone videos, more mountain bike content. And yeah, happy Easter. I'll see you guys later.